I've spent a lot of time on creating and managing users and groups in this course. And now what I want to do is I want to create a resource and assign users to be able to use that resource. Here's a list of some resources I already have on this particular account. You can see that I've created multiple different ones based on various different needs. But what I want to do here is I want to add in a storage resource. So you can go ahead and pay by adding in storage and pay that by the gigabyte, but instead in this particular video I'm going to show you how to get in free storage. This is just going to show you how to get 5 gigabytes of free storage. I'm just going to type in free and go to free services. Once I'm in free services, I'm going to choose to create blob storage. Now, blob storage is different than, say, a structured type of storage, where the structured storage is designed for SQL Server or virtual machines, things like that. But I'm going to create this blob storage, which is just fine for any type of disorganized file storage. So I'll click create. You can see I've already got my subscription. If you don't have one here, you'll have to create the subscription first, and then you'll be able to go ahead and use it. Now, the next thing is the resource group. Now, the resource group is something that you'll need to be able to add resources to it. So, for instance, if I add a bunch of different resources and they're not all in the same group, they may not be able to talk to each other. So whatever it is that I create here needs to be in the same store as any other resources if they need to talk to each other. So, for instance, like a VPN tunnel, storage, virtual machines, if all those need to work together, they all need to be in the same resource group. Now, I've created a lot of different resource groups for various different projects over the years, as you can see here. I'll just choose the default one that comes up because this is just a test anyway for this video. Now I've got to give the storage account name. It's got to be lowercase, something I haven't used before. So I'll just call this store one test. And if it's been used before, then it'll let you know. I'll just add some X's after it until finally it says that it's not being used. Now I want to choose the region. Sometimes in the free products, you're forced to use a specific one, but in this one, it actually does give me some additional options. So I'll just choose one that's close to me. And then I have the option for standard or premium. Typically, premium is going to cost money and standard is going to be free, even in the free services. So I'll just go ahead and choose standard. In the geo-redundant, that gives you a lot of different options. So this way you can have multiple different locations where your data is located and synchronized if you need that kind of additional service, which does cost extra. Now I'm going to click on next. It's going to take me to the next section, which is advanced. This has to do mostly with security, and I don't really need to worry about security on my account, but it's a good idea to take a look at this, maybe even add in encryption when we get to the encryption section as well. But again, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to move on to networking. This is going to, by default, enable public access from all networks. But if you'd like, you can specify different subnets that you would like, or disable public access and just use a VPN tunnel from your location into the Azure network. I'm going to choose enable public access just for this test, but in general, it's not the most secure way of doing things. Next, we have routing performance, and this is definitely something you want to pay attention to. So if we choose internet routing, it'll just choose whatever the quickest path is from one location to the other, say your location at your office to the Azure cloud. However, if you choose Microsoft network routing, what's going to happen is it's going to route within the Microsoft network until it gets to the public location, and then it will go ahead and go to you. So let's say I'm in Portland, Oregon, and my closest Microsoft data store is in Seattle. So what'll happen is if I need to communicate with that particular location, then it's going to bounce off anything that might be local to Portland in Microsoft's world and then go to Seattle. So my hops outside of Microsoft are going to be minimal. Whereas if I go internet, it's going to go through all different kinds of other stores. However, if I choose the internet routing, it's going to go through all different companies between my location and the Seattle location before it connects into the Azure cloud. That adds additional security risks. It might even be slower. So really, the Microsoft network is probably the better way to go. Now we have data protection. This has to do mainly with deleting files. So when you delete a file, do you want to do a soft delete or a hard delete? Soft delete allows you to still recover files for a specified amount of time. And then you also have tracking, so you can enable versioning for blob, so that way you can restore certain versions instead of just having the one you've got and the one you may have deleted. And that's a little bit like previous versions, say, on a Windows computer. I don't need that for this case, but you might decide you want to. Encryption decides whether you're going to use encryption. Now, if you choose the Microsoft managed keys, that's a much easier solution. Microsoft's going to manage that for you. I have done the customer managed keys as well, just because the client required that they use their own keys for compliance purposes. That requires a lot of additional steps, and you can certainly choose that if you like, but make sure you know what you're getting into. Under the enable support for customer managed keys, I typically just use the all service types for the different types of storage as you see here. Next, tags. Tags has to do with billing. And since I'm not billing any client for this, I'm not going to worry about it. But if you are billing a client, you can go ahead and fill that out. And then review everything. If it all looks the way you like it and you didn't make any mistakes, you'll see the create button light up. If you did make any mistakes, then it'll light up with a little triangle above the area that you might have made a mistake in and lets you go back and fix it. So now I'm clicking create to create my 5 gigabytes of storage. My storage has been created. I'm going to click go to resource. And now I see a lot of the same options that you would see, say, if you were highlighting a user or a device. You see basic ways that you can configure your storage. So now what I want to do is I want to give access to one of my users. So I'll click on Access Control, or IAM. I can choose to check access to see the level of access a user, group, or service has. And here you can put in the name of that user that you'd like to check. And the person I want to see if they have access, his name is Al. So there's Al Kent. There we go. And at this point, we don't see any current role assignments. And you can't really get anything under eligible assignments. So we want to give Al this particular access. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add the role assignment through grant access to this resource. And I'll choose the storage file data privileged contributor. So that way they have a lot of access. Click next. Now I'm going to say user group or service principal. I'm going to select the member and I'm going to go ahead and choose Al. And there's Al in my list, and click Select. Review and assign. And now Al has this particular role. If I go back to check access just to make sure, I'll just type in Al once again. And we can see that Al has the storage file data privilege. So we know that that worked fine. Now what we need to do is we need to see if Al can access this data. One way that Al should be able to access this easily is using this storage browser. So I'm going to download the Azure Storage Explorer so Al will be able to log in and access it. So I'll click on Download Now for Windows. And you can see there's multiple different operating systems you can use. There are also commands you can use to map a drive to this computer, and from this computer you can just access the storage from a drive letter. Storage Explorer is just a quick little application that allows you to open the files, it allows you to copy files, allows you to do all different kinds of things very easily without a lot of effort. So I'm going to choose whether to install for myself or for everyone. Accept the agreement and install. It also needs to put in .NET 6. That's fine. And I'll choose the default installation options. And you can either redirect Al to download this installation, or you can push it out through Intune, multiple different ways you can get Storage Explorer on a computer. Now I'm going to launch Azure Storage Explorer. Log in as Al, and we should be able to access that storage. Once it's open, I'm going to click on Sign In with Azure, and I'm going to use Al's username and password. I'll choose Azure and click Next. And it automatically opens up a prompt to log in with the Azure account in a web browser. So I'm going to use another account and put his in. After signing in, you should see this authenticated message. You can go back to Storage Explorer, and there it is. So once my storage has been created, I need to go back in and click on Storage Browser and click on Blob Containers. So I've created my storage account, but I haven't created any storage yet. So now I need to add a container. So I'll click on Add Container and give it a name. And I'll call it My Store. And I'll click Create. And now My Store has been created. And I'll click on My Store. And I can go ahead and upload some data into My Store. So I'll choose to upload. You can see I can drag and drop if I'd like. So I'll open up File Explorer and just drag a random file over into it. And then afterwards, using Storage Explorer, I should be able to see that data. So I'll choose this new text document and just drag it in and click Upload. In order to open up the data, we need the URL in order to use the OAuth authentication. So I've gone into the properties of my blob store, which is called My Store. And now I'm going to click on Connect to Azure Resource. So it's going to ask me what type of connection I'd like to do. It's a blob container. And now it's going to say I want to sign in using OAuth, or I could choose one of these other options. OAuth is the one that makes sense for the type of access I'm doing. So I'll click Next to make sure my user's there, and the user is. And now the display name. So I'll type in My Store and then put in the container or URL. And there's the URL that I just copied earlier, and click Connect. And there is My Store, including the new text document that I had put in earlier. From here, I can download that to my local computer, or I can upload additional files as well because I gave myself that access. I'll choose to select the folder, and now that file should be in my Downloads folder. And it opened it up. The file actually was blank, but just to give you an idea of how that's done. Now I can also upload files as well, or I can upload an entire folder. Whatever it is that makes sense. So I'll click the selected files. My File Explorer pops up, and I'll just choose any particular file. I'll choose this putty file and click Upload. What I've done in this video is I've created a resource, in this case blob storage. I assigned that storage to one of my users from Entra ID, and then I used Storage Explorer to access that data.